Golden Spiral Media presents The Blacklist Exposed.
Do you take this woman to be your successor? To continue on your legacy, even though she was better at it than you were? Welcome to The Blacklist Exposed. I am Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aram Peterson. And I don't know about you, Troy, but I'm still reeling from the 50 Shades of Keen on this latest episode. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Thanks for listening and joining us as we discuss number 93 in the Blacklist, The Deer Hunter. And no, Christopher Walken is not in this episode. It aired on February 27th, 2015. It was written by Amanda Kate Schumann and directed by Andrew McCarthy. That's right, Weekend at Bernie's is Andrew McCarthy. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at goldenspiralmedia.com/theblacklist.
Yeah, we asked all of you last week to answer our profiling question of the week. What do you think Red found inside of that metal box that was in the president's trunk?
And in the Beamly Blacklist TV page, TV said, that's an interesting name, Lizzie's brain. Lisa said some kind of device. Nancy said papers of some kind, like a birth certificate.
I like Lizzie's brain since it seems to be a little off with her these last couple episodes, but we'll get to that later.
We'll get into some of the fan concerns a little later. We don't want to sour that mood just yet, okay? We love Lizzie. We'll see what happens. On Facebook, Sandra and Casey said money. Well, I don't think they need any. Red doesn't need any money, that's for sure. Monica said more evidence that Red can use against the Alliance. Rory, Jeff, and Robin said a reader, decoder, or for whatever Lizzie found in the bunny. Kathleen said his lunch. And John, continuing the food fetish, said jelly donuts.
Those jelly donuts were awesome from that lady.
Nom, 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 nom.
Jelly donuts and guns. And as always, thanks so much for answering the profiling question of the week. If you want to get your thoughts heard here on the award-nominated Blacklist Exposed podcast, that's right, the Podcast Award nominations have come out. You can see those at podcastawards.com. Thanks so much for all of you that have supported. We will have information on how to vote at the end of the show. But again, if you want to answer our profiling question of the week, get on over to the Facebook group. Just search for The Blacklist Exposed or join us on Twitter at The Blacklist GSM. Our profiling question for this week, what happened to Red's secret caller? Dead? Alive? You tell us. We'll get into that and more as we discuss this week's episode case profile.
This week's case profile. Ressler and Keen went full Mulder and Scully. They attempted to chase down a serial killer known as the Deer Hunter. Troy, do you know who played our elusive Deer Hunter this week?
Probably the only person that could, as well as she did, Miss Amanda Plummer herself.
Tell the people listening, because here's what I've heard from a lot of people. Who is that lady? I know her, but I don't know her.
I believe, Aaron, that she was Honey Bunny from Pulp Fiction. Is that correct?
That would be correct. And she was also in So I Married an Axe Murderer. So those are two great classic films. People see her and they're like, I know that crazy lady because she's always the crazy lady. Guess what? Once again, she's a crazy lady.
She cray-cray.
I like how they hit her as it's a male. You know, originally when Keen is explaining to her students, which did you know she even had class still?
I don't know if she had a class or
she was teaching a bunch of kids, it seemed like a young profiler.
Yeah, maybe it was one of those doing us a favor, doing us a solid kind of thing because she's part of the FBI in the local area. Maybe it's something they have to do as part of their job description. I don't know.
It sure seemed like she was teaching a class to me. I've seen it twice. Both times I was like, I didn't know she was a teacher. Or maybe she just comes in and helps the profilers understand what profiling is, goes over a case that's relevant to this week's episode, and then moves on. I don't know. But we find out that this deer hunter, what the deer hunter does is they basically scoop out the guts like a baked potato, right? And then the killer, who's assumed to be a man, because typically in serial killer lore, it's typically a male, ages what is the thing you always hear on TV, like 24 to 40 or something. I mean, some random, it's like 18 to 49. It's like the TV demographic could be your serial killer.
Yeah, and then he scoops out the liver and takes a bite. I think that'd only be good if he had sour cream and chives on it, though.
Or a nice Chianti. What did you think, first off, about, because we're kind of off the blacklist. It's not really somebody on the blacklist.
I think this was the biggest question for most of the people in the audience, because when you look at how the Blacklist has been operating, it's always somebody Red knows, or Red has to move off the chessboard in order to get his way. This one, because Red doesn't like serial killers, and I'm glad they even talked about that when they had their conversation between him and Liz. Liz is like, you don't like serial killers. Why are you interested in this case? And I think this was one of these things where it became a blacklister because Red still needs Liz to get the fulcrum, and that's why they're classified as a blacklister, even though I don't think this deer hunter was ever on Red's endgame, unless we're going to find fallout from this episode later on in season 2 or season 3.
I don't know, man. It's
But it was odd.
It was a problem for me, because for me the whole basis of the show is the Blacklist. So I just didn't get why they went off kilter here, because it really seemed for me personally, it seems like Keen hasn't done that sort of work in a while. I mean, she's really just been Red's damsel in distress. It seems like been Red's cohort for the last 2 years, and I really haven't seen her do a whole lot of serial killer investigation, except we haven't had that since the Stew Maker. So I was, that I can recall off the top of my head. So I was kind of surprised we went that direction. I don't know if it worked for me. I really don't. The episode was good. Don't get me wrong. I liked the episode. It just, for me, I just didn't get a good enough understanding of why we went that direction to begin with.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was something having to do with this relationship between the deer hunter, as I said in my opening, right? It was her husband that was the original deer hunter, apparently died, and then she kind of took up the charge after that. So I don't know if there's something to deal with the husband-wife combo, which we can go back to the dream sequence and have this husband and wife combo. So I don't know if we're trying to get some like allegory or some similarity to what's going on in the overarching part of the story. Mm-hmm. Much like Hank talked about last week, how the episode seemed to be Ressler's MO for his entire life. Very similar here. Maybe we're supposed to see clues in the relationships that address the entire story.
Well, maybe. Yeah, that's where. Maybe it's just it's a small red herring that's taking us further downstream. Keen thinks that the killer is a man. Everybody that's ever done any kind of psychology will tell you that when it comes to serial killers, 95% of the time, it is a man. So that's no big surprise, or at least on TV and movies. And here, we find out that Ressler thinks it's a copycat, Keen thinks it's a man, and Red comes in, and apparently he should be a profiler, because this guy is slick. He puts it together really quickly that, yeah, it's not a man, it's a woman. Now, did you buy that Red is ultimately a fantastic profiler?
I don't think he's a fantastic profiler, but at the same time, his explanation does make it seem like he's at least a very astute, aware person, which goes directly into the conversation he had with Lizzie about, I can tell you're lying. Your demeanor, your word pacing, the way your eyes are shifting, that whole thing makes it seem like Red would be a great profiler because he's good at reading people. But is he a profiler where he's trying to understand the criminal mind, or is he just really good at playing poker?
That's a very good point. Very good point. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was very cool that Keen is the one that's most trained on this, and they didn't make her seem dumb. Okay, that's the one thing. I think people on the internet were making it seem like, well, she must be dumb if she couldn't figure that out on her own. I think this is always assumed to be a man based on what we're seeing. So the fact that it's a woman would be the what a Red call it. It's the rare occasion. It's the rare occurrence. That's completely normal. It makes sense. I think she was doing a very astute job at her job, and Red just has that criminal gut feeling, I guess. I don't know. Well, poor Chad Henning. He apparently has a very unhappy wife, Mary, who knows a crazy lady who talks to birds named Tracy, who apparently takes care of things. That's where all of this stems from. Mary, when they come to question Mary, when Keen and Ressler show up to question Mary, my personal opinion was this woman hides murder about as effectively as OJ did. You know what I mean? I mean, it just, everything she does and says screams, all right, I know something.
And I really like how we had that, like we said, conversation between Red and Liz about reading liars. And that directly gets reflected here in this situation as Liz is kind of like seeing her sweat, and then she just starts to grill her even more to make her kind of collapse under the pressure. So I really like how they tied those two components together in this story, because nothing else seemed to be tied to the overarching thematics of the Blacklist.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, some people really liked the episode because it was a departure from the norm, which it definitely was. It was definitely a departure from what we're used to in this show. And some people really just wanted more mythology. I don't think you can, people forget that the Blacklist is like 22 episodes, right? So you need to take a break here and there. You know, you have to do other stories, which I guess goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Yeah, it's not necessarily a Blacklist specific, and it's not going to further the plot a whole lot, but I think you have to do these because there's so much.
Well, I think the problem with that everybody had was, if it's really not an important Blacklister to read, then why such a high number? Why not like 212 or something?
That's a good point. What do you think? What's your theory on that? Do you have one?
I still can't make heads or tails about the randomness of the numbers. I think potentially people are like saying the numbers could be a code and we're supposed to be writing them down in order, and that'll be like a cipher that could decrypt some secret message or something. Lots of shows have known to do that, like Fringe. After each at the commercial breaks, there was a code that you had to decipher. Alias, the reverse letters were apparently a code for each episode. So possible, and that's why the numbers have to be in this order, but I'd still like to see her like below 200.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Or above 200, depending on how you're thinking about the list.
Maybe they won't fill them all in, though. You know, they don't have to fill in everybody on the list.
This is true also, because if the end game happens, you don't have to cross them all off.
Well, if your wife happens to go to White Haven shelters, divorce her. Like, you should never hit a woman. Absolutely not. But if you happen to smack her around a little bit, if she goes there for safety, you need to leave. Get the hell out of the house. Because apparently that is where Tracy works. And Tracy is the one, played by Amanda Plummer, who was Honey Bunny and whatnot, that is finding women from these shelters that have been abused, and they can't, like Mary, they couldn't find help in the system to assist them escape their abusive husbands, right?
Right.
Okay. And so what she's doing is she's talking to the women. She's actually coordinating this with the women, which I thought that was kind of surprising. I really thought it was going to be one of those things where the serial killer, the victim's wife, had no knowledge of it. But that's a nice little twist, I thought.
Right, because a serial killer is doing it mostly for their own motives from a profiling perspective. Mm-hmm. When Tracy meets with these women, she's more of a contract killer, which wouldn't really be a serial killer, would it?
No, it wouldn't. And I thought that was a nice little twist to the psychology of it. Typically when we see this, if it's a serial killer, always the same kind of thing. Nobody knows. It's very random. It's very hard to find. I think you throw in the fact that there is a personal touch involved. That just makes it a nice little tweak on the story. In addition to the fact we already have a female serial killer, which is already a difference from your normal, typical serial killer stories.
But then if you take it the other side of the coin, a serial killer is someone that does it for cause or from a disturbance that happened in their life. And in this case, Tracy's doing it specifically because she was beaten herself and went and got help at Whitehaven shelters before becoming an employee. So from that perspective, she is a serial killer. So now we have a serial contract killer, which is probably even more dangerous.
And rare. It's like a unicorn in the killer world. Somebody that's a driven serial killer and a contract killer. Yeah. Well, we'll get to her motives more here in a second. One question I had is when Tracy, a.k.a. the deer hunter, knocks Lizzie out, she's worried Mary's going to talk, which Mary's totally going to talk. I'm sorry. She would have cracked in a minute. But Tracy goes to confront her. Mary assures her, hey, I'm not going to, I promise, fingers scouts on or whatever. And she sees the FBI agents come by. She knocks. I don't know if Mary died. Did she die? I saw the pool of blood, but.
Anytime you see pool of blood and head, I assume death.
Yeah, either that or really bad headache. But Lizzie goes running off after her without backup again. And Tracy knocks her out. Now, why wouldn't Tracy continue to run? Why did she even bother to take her captive? Because this is a sincere question. That logic is kind of lost on me.
Well, the logic that's lost on me is this kind of slight tap that she gives to what's her name in the house. That ends up killing her. But And Liz ran into that shovel full force. I mean, it was like wonk. Like, how does Liz survive that without breaking her skull or something? That's what I want to know. I don't care if she carries her away, but Liz should have died from that shovel hit in comparison.
She did hit her pretty damn hard. That was quite a conk. That's a sincere question, though. Do you know why? Why did she take her? I don't get it.
Yeah, because at that point, I don't think her face was seen. So why take her? Because, she could get away scot-free and no one knows. But if they know enough to get to her house, then maybe they know that she's seen her face, so she has no options at that point. Remember, she's crazy, right? She's sitting there saying, I shouldn't be paranoid. She's talking to her birds. I shouldn't be paranoid. I should just let it go. It's going to be fine. So maybe the paranoia is what caused her to grab her and capture her, kidnap her, versus just walking away from the situation. The paranoia was speaking versus the logic part of her brain.
Okay, I'll buy that. As long as you buy that, I'll buy that. I don't really buy that, but hey, it was still a fun episode. And then Honey Bunny takes Lizzie back to her little fun shack and puts her in a gimp costume and then strings her up, 50 Shades of Grey style. What did you think about this little first Keen getting caught again? And also, I kind of liked her little her attempted escape. Actually, I thought it was a valiant effort.
Yeah, I mean, she was kind of like faking being passed out and then just headbutts her in the face. I thought that was really clever on her part. Not that she was going to get very far because she's still strapped in and, whether she's hanging from the ceiling or not, she could get to her feet, but she's still tied to the thing. She's not going to go anywhere.
I thought she was going to pull an arrow, man. I thought she was going to flip out of that thing and just knock her down. I was looking forward to it. Well, we get the Bond monologue because Tracy explains her entire story to Lizzie while she's strung up. And I did like the touch of Keen telling her to get on with it, by the way. I thought that was a nice touch. It turns out here's a whole situation. Well, tell us the whole situation. How did Tracy get here?
I mean, basically, the deer hunter was her husband, Tracy's husband, and he was beating her. And at the end of the day, when she finally killed her husband from, attacking her, and she got that rush of, ooh, this is what it's like to kill people. This feels good. I want to keep doing this. And that's where the serial killer part comes in. But she wanted to do it with a purpose. And so that's where the contract killer comes in, because now she's going to help these women that she's basically has access to because of her job. And I think doing it in the way that her husband did it, it's kind of a cloak and veil, so that as they're looking for a male killer, she feels like she can get off scot-free and keep doing good work, quote unquote, which is very similar to like James Covington or the doctor that was just trying to cure his son. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these blacklisters are doing good things just with the wrong motives in mind. And this is exactly the same situation. Good motive, bad way to do it.
A very, very, very bad way. I kind of like that. It was kind of a natural born killers kind of thing. Only they didn't know that the whole time they could have worked in unison, her and her husband. Instead of him smacking her around, they could have been partners.
Moral of the story, when you have relationship issues, talk about it.
Exactly. Honey, where are you going with that knife? I'm going to go gut somebody. You want to come?
Sure.
You know what? It's important we spend quality time together.
Absolutely.
Problem solved. And then to top this portion of the story, we're going to get into each of the characters here in a minute. To top this portion of the story out, Ressler comes in mid-strangulation, and first off, okay, she's strung up, right? When he walks in, she's got her in a leg's death grip there, a leg Vulcan death grip.
We call it the thigh vice.
The thigh vice? Okay. She's got her in a thigh vice. Ressler comes in and gives her like a look like, I'm so disappointed in you. Why? What are you disappointed in?
I don't think it was a disappointment look. I think it was Lizzie, we've been down this road. We've talked about this. I care about you. Don't do the Tom thing. Don't go that road. You're better than this. You're my partner. He's like talking her off of the ledge before she goes too far.
But at that point, I would have been like, all right, she strung you up in a gimp costume. Go for it. Do what you got to do. Because this woman, she's got it coming.
But it goes back to Ressler being the kind of letter of the law man. And because of that, he wants to say, you don't have the right to kill her just because you got kidnapped. We have to do due process and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's why Ressler says, hey, walk away, because I am the straight shooter when I'm, sober. But
I'm sober. I got some thoughts on what you just said, but that's going to, when we get to talk about Ressler a little bit more, that's going to come up because what you just said, I don't totally agree with. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes.
All right.
That's the crux of the story. That's the basic story. We did have a lot of character stuff. And as you know, if you've never listened to this show, we break down the basic story of what happened. And then we'll take each character and where they came from. It's kind of a different way to do it. Some shows will do the bit by bit, go through every story point, just recount everything that happened. We don't like to do that. We're trying to just talk about the stuff that we want to talk about, we care about. And we think you guys do too. Agreed?
Agree.
Okay. And before we get to this week's characters, I do want to add thanks to Hank the last 2 weeks for filling in for me while I was on vacation. Greatly appreciate. You did a great job. I appreciate that. If I didn't say it at the beginning, which I should have, I just want to say that real quick. Okay, Samar, just don't get fat.
Best line of the night.
Best line of the night. I think that should be part of Red's rhetoric. I know Red doesn't say it. I don't care. She beat anything Red said this episode.
So the question is, what's the over-under on which episode they're going to kiss or make out or something?
Well, because here's the thing. Now, her character didn't do a whole lot this episode. Really, everything she did was revolving around Aram, right?
Yeah, even when she was like kind of shyly off in the corner, like, hey, why are you spending more time with Red than you're spending with me?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And she finally admitted that she finds him sexy. So we're making some progress. They've already had a lot of these, little cat and mouse sexual innuendo things going on. I'm glad that they're making some progress. So what do you think? What is the over-under on episodes before they do something?
It's big enough that maybe Samar's life hangs in the balance as we close up season 2, and somehow it happens at episode 22 of season 2. I'll put my stake there.
I'm going to go on the record, and what I'm going to say is it's going to happen in episode 21 or the beginning in episode 22, and there's going to be some serious life consequences near the end of episode 22.
So we're about the same. But you're going to take if it happens at the beginning of the episode, then I'm right and Troy's wrong.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. Does that work for you?
Fine.
I'm good with it. What about Aram? Now, he actually had a few things happen in this episode. First, Red, remarked on his beautiful coif of hair, which I agree, and he's got a chiseled beard. The man has an impeccable beard. And then Red has him trace a number, once again has him do something without a warrant. I guess my question in regards to him is, are we worried he's going to get in trouble for this at any point? Because he's done this several times now.
That is what was weird for me, because he did this before and wasn't worried about getting in trouble. And this is the first time he's like, oh, I need a warrant first. Why would he stand up to Red at this point? And he's like, oh, no, you don't need a warrant. So was it just a comedy play that the writers put in here? Or is it something that Aram is starting to second guess what he should be doing because maybe he's concerned about getting found out now that Aram's getting close, or that Samar is getting close?
I took it more as jokey, really. I didn't really get a whole lot of anything other than joke. So I wasn't surprised by that at all. But I do think at some point this is going to bite him in the butt. I don't see how it doesn't. You're very, is willy-nilly still a thing? We'll say that. Very willy-nilly offering to help Red when I don't think he should really be helping Red. Because, Red is ultimately a bad guy. And every week, you see just how bad of a guy he really is. And I realize maybe you have a concern about threat of life or what he could do to you if you don't help him. But you work at the post office. And I would think you would be more concerned with, I can't give this guy too much. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, he is one of these guys where I think he wants to do good overall, and as long as whatever I'm going to do is for the greater good, I'm going to go with it, even though it may be illegal. But at the same time, he still seems kind of, I guess, squirrely in the fact of his fear factor for Red, and that's the only reason he goes through with it, because he's scared of Red at the end of the day.
Very true. That makes sense, but I still think he should be concerned about it. We as the audience should be concerned for his safety. I think this will bite him severely. Cooper was barely in the episode. I think he had, one scene? Was he off getting his treatments? Or
exactly.
What?
I think he was off doing something that didn't really need to be taken care of this week because, again, if this blacklister isn't important to Red, why would it be important to Cooper? Just let the peons go ahead and run this one.
I was so sad that I couldn't be here last week because that was, I thought, a really interesting development in the show. Even though I think sick characters has kind of been overdone on TV, I like that this kind of thing happened to the guy at the heart of the show. You know what I mean? I mean, he's got a big heart. He's the one guy I think you can always count on to do pretty much the right thing in this show. And, finding out he has whatever he has, I don't even think we know for sure, right?
Right, and I love that the fact that they worked this in because of the end of the Berlin saga in season 1 being the catalyst to find this illness. Then he has the illness, and now they're using the treatment as a way for this new Attorney General Tom to kind of get access to Red or use Harold for something in the future.
Right.
It's all tied together, and I like that they did that rather than just being sick character for storyline.
Okay, Ressler. You want to talk about Ressler?
Who doesn't want to talk about Ressler?
Everybody wants to talk about Ressler. Okay, I thought he was going to solve the case. I was pretty excited. I'm like, oh, he's onto it because he's like, that's a copycat and I'm going to prove it. And then he didn't prove anything.
Well, I love the revelation as they're kind of bantering about the harbor master, and then he gets the teeth. He's like, take a bite out of it, and the teeth marks are what was the breaking point. Mm-hmm. And because he had that like epiphany, I was like, oh, that's the Ressler of the olden days. I like that. Go with that. And then not so much.
Oh, well, he's starting to get there. That's what matters. But he did the scolding he gives to Keen, right? He gives her a scolding at the end of the episode because she wants to go turn herself in over this whole harbor master thing, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a second. But so he tells her, don't do it, basically. Think of everybody that you're saving by doing this task force, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you earlier were discussing the look that he gave her when he walked in on her and the goody two-shoes cop thing. This, to me, feels like the opposite. When he has this scolding, this, to me, says, don't do the right thing because we need you for this right thing. That seems contradictory to me.
It's a difference, though. I mean, it's the right thing, and it's the serving your country. There's a lot of stuff people do to serve our country that probably isn't copacetic or kosher or whatever you want to call it, because it's the thing that has to get done because the greater good, protecting the Union, is more important above all else in their mind. And I'm glad for it because it lets me do podcasting and talk to you guys and hang out and watch TV, and that's a good thing. I'm safe because they make these tough choices. Is it the right choice? Depends on your perspective.
Okay. I was just asking what you thought. I think it's contradictory. You don't care what I think, so we'll move on. How did you think overall about his character in this episode? Do you think they gave him enough to do?
Yeah, I thought he was okay this week. The fact that he comes in and saves his part. I like that they tied in the Tom strangulation into Keen strangulation, and it was Ressler that found him versus, say, Samar or Dembe or somebody else. So it brings that storyline into focus because we're really analyzing Liz's psychoses at this point, her brain, we're profiling Keen in this season, basically. How is she dealing with the fallout from season 1? How is she dealing with the fallout of Tom killing this harbor master? And as she goes through this investigation, and then, of course, now finding out that Red is basically using her. So I like that we're finding the profile of Keen out. At the same time, we're going to talk about Keen and how we really feel about how she's being written.
Some of us feel, not all of us. Detective Wilcox, here's a guy, and we're bringing him up because he has been a major part of the last couple episodes, and this episode in particular. He's a detective who essentially put it all together that there's something more going on with this harbor master. He met with Samuel and got him to talk. He's the guy that cracked this case, the harbor master murder. We find out, as this case breaks down, he's humiliated. But we find out he's obviously a good man. Even though he's been humiliated because of Red, he seems ultimately a good man. We see him help out a homeless guy when he thinks nobody's watching him, when Keen's outside the police station. Do you want to see more of him? Do you think we'll see more of him?
That is exactly the question I had when this final scene came up, when he was handing the money to the homeless guy, and then even gives him more money and tells him exactly where to go and who to talk to. Because any other situation like this, if it was an open and shut case and it was done, it would have ended in that interrogation room with the guy from the federal government. And because we got that clip of him at the end, and Liz being there specifically to see it happen, I think that's part of the inner turmoil that Liz is going to have. And maybe somewhere down the line, she goes and talks to Detective Wilcox on the side still.
Okay. I'm curious what'll happen with him. I really am. I like him. I don't think this is over. I really don't. I think the Harbor Master thing is, how can it be, right? I mean, they still found the body, and he knows that Keen was involved, even if he was humiliated. So he's going to try and get her one way or the other, right?
Yeah, they'd have to. I mean, because there's the body and there's evidence, it's got to be solved.
Mm-hmm. I mean, jumping from him to Samuel Aleko, a.k.a. the Rat.
The bodyguard.
Yeah, he basically would have to take the entire rap to make it go away, right?
I don't know if that's true. I mean
he led them to the body.
Yeah, so he led him to the body, which means that he was out jogging and found the body, just like that whole
buried.
Well, the Serial podcast, right? It's like you just found this body in the woods. You know, it doesn't mean that they actually did the murder. You know, somebody else could have murdered him, and you just drugged the body, or got paid, or just stumbled across it. It wasn't buried very well. It didn't seem.
I don't know if you heard the Serial podcast, but he got locked up. I'm just saying.
You did.
It's interesting to me because I really don't know how this entire thing can possibly go away unless Samuel also goes away. Now, Red makes this deal because he finds out that his brother has a heart condition. He's on a heart transplant list, sorry. And it's going to take forever for him to get a heart. Red makes a deal. You eat this, and I'll get your brother a heart next week.
Well, this is my plot hole for the episode because we already had Dr. James Covington earlier this year. Dr. James Covington was taken off of the grid so that this guy in New Guinea or wherever it was, Indonesia, could not get the transplant so that Red could get the Port Authority. So if he can get a heart in less than a week, does this mean James Covington was released and he's back on the market doing his practice? Or has somebody replaced James Covington at his practice?
Look at you. That's why you do this show, man. You can tie it into a previous episode. Because I didn't even think of that. All I'm thinking of is poor Samuel. They never really explain if he's going to have to eat all the charges, if he's going to have to swallow a guilty of murder or what. They never really say.
And they never really show it either. They just say, yep, I'm not talking. I don't know anything.
He's like, I don't know what happened. I was out jogging. Obviously, I'm a big jogger. Look at me. You know, he's one of those guys where people ironically call him tiny. You know what I mean? I don't think he's running a whole lot. I don't think he's stumbling into any bodies.
He was running after a jelly donut cart and some guns.
So mean. So we'll see what happens with that. I really think this is going to come back into play. Even though Red assured Keen that this is done, I really think it's going to come back into play.
There are enough dangling carrots for a story to continue here.
The rabbits will jump. All right, Keen, we have to address the elephant in the room. Many, not all, but I've seen a lot of scuttlebutt on this. Many listeners have complained about how Keen has been written as of late. Specifically, that she continues to get caught. Some people are saying she's acting, quote-unquote, bratty. That's a quote. I did not say that. Someone else said that. And essentially reverting back to her first season self after a really strong build-up in the first half of the season. So I want to discuss that with you. What is your take on this character?
Well, I like Liz. I think she's still there in the dark place, the kind of badass Lizzie that we were hoping she was going to become as season 2 was progressing. I think it's really hard because when you think about where we were in the first 30 episodes of this show, the first 30 episodes were, why is Red involved with Liz? And then it leads into these people are linked specifically because we have to find Berlin and complete that Berlin saga. The minute the second half of season 2 starts, we are on a different trajectory with the fulcrum. And the fulcrum is specifically centered around Red. So with that in mind, Liz doesn't have to be at the forefront of these episodes, and therefore the writing appears to make Liz out to be a lesser character because it's so much focus on Red and the fulcrum and this Russia thing and, you know, avenging Fitch's death and all of this stuff. And I think that's why people are seeing Liz in a whiny, bratty, kind of delusional first-year agent type of role because it's being written that way because they don't want her to be so prominent because Red is the focus of this fulcrum storyline specifically.
Some of the specific concerns were that she gets captured a lot. I agree with that. She's running off without backup a lot. She gets captured a lot. I agree with that. I think it's a trope that probably needs to take a break for a while. even though I know it hasn't been every episode, it feels like it's been almost every episode since in the last 5 or 6 episodes. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and then even if they were to, in this specific case, let's say Ressler runs after the deer hunter, after Tracy in the snow, and he gets cold cocked, and he's the one that's hanging there. I mean, does the strangling thing so it's a matter of storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense this episode, this singular episode, for Ressler to get caught because she kills men. And then Liz would be the badass hero coming in to save Ressler. Now, again, Ressler always gets captured every episode, too. So you could say the same kind of trope is annoying. But in the overall story of where things are going, it makes more sense for Lizzie to get captured and do this thigh vice move because it relates directly to Tom and the relationship between Liz and Ressler and how they're going to work through that since he's the one that also helped Tom escape. So I think they're leading up to, we all know now that Tom is coming back. His marketing department won't let it alone. But because Tom's coming back, they're leading that story to that point. So you need to tell stories that tie into that narrative rather than focus on this standalone episode where it would have made more sense if Ressler was the one that was captured. Here's
my thing. I had when I watched this episode, it was my first day back from vacation, right? I had 10 days off. It was beautiful. This is the first thing I did when I came back from vacation. I did myself a little drinking game, which is, and I'm sorry, if you don't drink, please do not do these things. They're bad for you. But I did a little drinking game where it's like, okay, I'm going to take and I put it on Twitter too. I'm going to take a drink if they say Fulcrum or if Ressler or Keen gets kidnapped. Sure enough. I mean, if I would have abided by my own rules, I would have been under the table. So I do think there is a case to be made for some of these tropes have probably been done too much. I also think if you look at any really strong episode or strong series with a strong mythology, you're going to find tropes like that have to get repeated. Now, what I would suggest, if the showrunners listen or anybody on the show happens to listen, you've got a whole cast of characters that could be taken. You've got Dembe, you've got Samar, you've got Aram, you've got Cooper, you've got all these other people. Let them get snatched for a while. Because A, I don't think you need to kidnap somebody or hold somebody hostage every episode. There's other ways, I think, to do it. And B, you have other characters, put them in danger for a little bit. Because I do agree with people watching the show that on that particular trope, I think it's been done too much.
Yeah, because we have Luther Braxton, Lizzie kidnapped. We have Ruslan Denizov. Technically, Ressler and Liz weren't kidnapped, but they were pulled out of the elevator together and taken against their will. So we'll call that kidnapped, right? And then we have Kenyon family, kidnapped. This week, kidnapped. It's a little much.
That's 4 in a row. And it's not us poo-pooing the show. We love the show. We do a whole podcast on it. Trust me, we wouldn't do that if we didn't like the show. Because there's no other reason to do a podcast unless you really love the show. It's just one of those things where I think you're doing your audience a disservice if you're not honest about some of the things that concern you about it, right?
Absolutely. You have to take that feedback into heart. Now, granted, they have a plan, but that plan's only good as long as people are watching, and eventually there will be some audience erosion if they get really frustrated.
Now, one of the other things that people brought up is the bratty thing. I don't agree with that one. I think it appears that way. I think some cases it has appeared that way because she has done, Lizzie the character, has done that thing where she told Red, we're done, I'm not associating with you at the end of an episode. And then the very next week, she's good with it. And that's happened a couple times. That comes across as bratty, I think. I think it's just a matter of they've got a lot of filler episodes to knock out, and it's just they're trying to keep the tension up. It's very hard over 22 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, this show's clearly a better, probably 16-episode pace. Give it two 8s, if you will, split the season in half.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be better because then it would drop out some of that filler. But that's, of course, NBC's decision. It's all about money at the end of the day. But bratty is an interesting way to term it because there's been a lot of talk about how much father-daughterness was in this episode. You know, what, are you going to ground me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's totally a bratty comment right there. So maybe bratty is the appropriate word.
Maybe they're trying to craft a father-daughter relationship.
Could be.
It could be, or the appearance of one. You know what I mean? It's just something where, look, I've been with this show for well into a season and a half, going on 2 seasons. I have faith in the show at this point. It's one of those things where you either do or you don't. I have faith in the show. I have faith in Keen as a character. Megan Boone, I think, is a fine actress. she's doing what she can with the writing. But I think she's pulled off a lot of stuff. Do I think they've regressed a little bit from where they were, like when we hit that mid-season finale? And she was badass, I thought, to that point. Yes, I think they have pulled her back a little bit. And I don't know where they're going with it, though. I dislike being one of those people watching a show that I say I love and then freaking out every time something doesn't go my way for a couple episodes. So I am one of those people where I will see this out until the season concludes, and then we'll see where that character is to see if where that plan arc ended up.
Yeah, I enjoyed the episode, and I think the conversation they had at the end between Red and Liz, even though they're not friends anymore, that's just business, that that she actually gives up the fact that she has the fulcrum. Now, she thinks it's the fulcrum. We still don't know if it's really the fulcrum or not until something actually happens with that thing. But we're going to say it's the fulcrum now, because if she says it's the fulcrum, we have to kind of take the showrunners at kind of face value. And apparently it was on NBC.com when they said, when a picture of it pulling out of the bunny, they were like, oh, the fulcrum emerges. So granted, it could be a red herring and just trying to throw us off the trail, of course, with these types of shows. But I'm surprised that she said, yeah, I have it. I figured she would have held that for leverage longer.
Do you think it's the fulcrum itself, or is the fulcrum actually a thing that leads to the thing that leads to the thing?
I go back to, as far as I understand, the fulcrum is something that Red needs in order to hold it over the Alliance so he doesn't get killed. It's information that could bring the Alliance down.
No, I get that. I'm saying what she has, do you think it's actually going to lead exactly where he needs, or is it going to be like a national treasure where it's going to lead to one more clue, leads to another clue, et cetera?
I think it'll be the national treasure thing. I think that what Red knows about the fulcrum, that'll be like one of these season ending or fall finale kind of bombshells is, oh, it really wasn't what I thought it was. It's actually bigger. Dun, dun, dun. 2 more seasons.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I was just curious. Do you think it was smart that she told him?
No, absolutely not. It's too early. It's like 2 episodes. You got to span that out a little bit more, unless there's something super huge coming down the line.
Well, how many do we have left in the season?
Well, this was...
got 8? 6? 6.
Yeah, 6 probably.
6 episodes. Well, I mean, they're coming up in the final stretch, man. I mean, they got to get moving with it.
They do.
I'm sure they've got a few more kidnappings to get to, and they got to space these things out.
I just want to see Aram go save Samar. Like that,
really?
That episode would be fun.
I think you're going to see it in episode 22.
I mean, not to go back to Alias again, but there were missions where Marshall had to go out and actually be in the field. So I'd love to see Aram go out into the field.
Not to go back to Alias, but here, hang on a second, guys. I'm going to go back to Alias yet again. Jeez, just throw on a wife beater, put on his, get him in Nakatomi Plaza, and just let him go full McLean.
You know what?
I like it. All right, Red. That's the guy everybody's been waiting for. I've even heard people say, kill all the cast and just keep Red, and this show would be fantastic. I don't agree with that, but I have liked reading some of your theories. He spent a lot of time this episode just clearing Lizzie. So once again, we have to ponder that question, the age-old question now. Is he doing these things for good, or just because he wants that fulcrum?
Because he wants that fulcrum. I mean, they address that elephant in the room right at the end of the episode. It's like, you don't want to tell me because you think that if you tell me that I'm going to be done with you and won't need you anymore. I'm just glad that they actually addressed the audience with that exact conversation. I think that's smart on the writer's part. I keep going back to everything that Red does clearly shows that he is into stuff for his own self-interest. And is his self-interest Liz, or is his self-interest self-preservation? And I think that's the biggest question of the show, which we probably won't find out until the finale. And we'll just have to keep wrestling with it as it happens.
When you look at her reaction after he made that statement, where he makes a statement and says, hey, I think you're only doing that because you're afraid I won't need you anymore. When you read her face, what did you take? That exactly right, like he nailed it, or she's hesitant to say, not so much?
I think it was absolutely nailed it. I think she was aware from that situation back in the Luther Braxton conclusion with the whole dream sequence, like, you just use people. And so, yeah, absolutely. She's like, oh, you realize that I think that way, so how do we move forward from this point? And she's like, well, I have it. Okay, that's an interesting way to move forward because he's going to kill you Diane Fowler style right here.
Yeah, I actually think that it's an issue of she senses that they have a connection, even though it's kind of like when you meet somebody who has they have a parent where they have a lot of issues, right? The parent, they've always had issues. They never really felt like the parent was doing things in their best interest. But for some reason, they always come back to them. They always forgive them. They always let them off the hook. And I think that's very much the relationship I'm seeing develop. And I wonder if some of what people perceive as insecurity on Keen's part or brattiness on her part is the writers developing that portion of the relationship where they're saying, a lot of people have that kind of family dynamic, and even though they know the people that they're dealing with are horrible, they keep going back to them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense.
Okay.
And I like the juxtaposition of this, of the fact that Red uses people to get what he needs. In this sense, Lizzie is continuing to work with Red and needs Red because he has information she needs. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the only reason she keeps sticking around and doing this stuff, because she wants answers just as much as Red wants the fulcrum.
Very interesting stuff. The secret caller. Let's go to the secret caller. We've handled the Red and Lizzie thing. What is this? I mean, Aram tracks this guy down after Red bails on a meeting because apparently this guy didn't want to deal with Dembe. He's wrong. Dembe's awesome. You should deal with him. Turns out that something happened to our mysterious caller. There's blood everywhere. What are your thoughts on who this guy is and what happened to him?
Well, I have to back it up first to the kind of going through Red's head, right? I mean, clearly he's saying, oh, that time isn't going to work for me for this prisoner transport because I got to take this call. And the fact that this unknown person, which could be Red's only lead to finding out information, and he's going to take the chance that Dembe can get through to this guy and instead save Liz. So that decision by Red is pretty critical in understanding the relationship to Liz as it relates to the relationship to the overall endgame, I think. Now, the mysterious caller himself, I was shocked that his number is a exchange in Russia, and the three numbers are specifically St. Petersburg, yet here he is in New York, literally watching the phone booth from a window. Mm-hmm. So was he in St. Petersburg? Is he just forwarding his number through Google Voice? I don't know. But the fact that he's in the States tells me that it's something that this guy is keeping tabs on Red as much as this clandestine operation is.
You can do that with Google Voice. Our Hollywood Outsider podcast, we actually have our number reverted to a California number. So see, you can do it. That might be what he did. Good. Very astute, man. I like it. I was I don't know who the guy is. I have no idea who this guy is. And I'm very, very curious to see exactly where he fits into everything. I do like that they introduced this. This is I thought, kind of a nice shift, as opposed to we're always chasing a thing. We're always chasing basically the microfiche or something. Now we actually have a person that he's trying to chase and that actually knows more about Red than Red knows about him. That makes it interesting for me because, throughout the show, you always have that assumption that, well, Red just knows everything because he generally does. I like the fact that somebody doesn't know everything. Like, he doesn't know everything in this situation.
And I really like the fact that we actually saw him, albeit from behind, but it is a person, a physical being, not some recorded message or some bouncing off 600 satellites and it's a female on the other end or something. I don't know. But
not that computer from Captain America.
Exactly. So at least it's a real person, which means that this guy had vested interest in whatever Fitch had or whatever relationship they had. So now he has this vested interest in Red that he's willing to at least somehow meet him face-to-face potentially if he were to get to that phone booth. But alas, it ain't going to happen now because he gone.
He gone. Well, do you think he's gone? Or, because here's the thing. What do you think happened to him? I personally think Tom is back and Tom hasn't.
That's the obvious answer.
No, that's my personal opinion. That's what I would have thought. No matter what people are, I don't care what people are saying on the internet. That's my personal theory.
Okay, my personal theory is that he was pissed off that Red didn't make the meet. So he staged it to look like he was captured or kidnapped or killed. And that way Red would be heartbroken that he wasn't able to get to this. And eventually he's going to reach out again and say, that was strike one. Don't piss me off again. Just to let Red know, don't mess with me.
There's blood, man. You think he just shot himself to prove a point?
Yeah, but you can get any kind of blood. I mean, it could be pig's blood, could be another human's blood. You could get blood anywhere.
That's a sick theory.
I watch a lot of TV.
Yeah, you do. Stop it. You're creeping me out. I mean, look, I honestly think there's something happened to the guy. I mean, that's cool that you have this random Tarantino theory. I don't have that theory. I actually believe someone either came in, shot him, took him, or there was a scuffle of some sort, and he made his way out. But I still think Tom is involved either way. Just my gut. Because we haven't seen him in a few episodes, his name keeps popping up in the credits. He's obviously going to still be around.
Very possible.
No. You mark my words. Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this week's episode? Is there any more?
I think I'm good. I mean, in general, it's a good episode. Still puzzled why it was there prevalent for, Red, because it wasn't Red's MO. So why is it a blacklister? People are mixed about Lizzie. People are mixed about that concept. So, all in all, though, I think I enjoyed the revelation about the deer hunter being a woman and the fact that she actually did the job better than her husband because of the fact that, she had clean, precise cuts every single time.
In relation to some of the mixed feelings from listeners and watchers of the show, do you think any of that could be because the show has so many really strong episodes that when it has a more typical TV filler episode, and let's face it, most TV shows have them, that it's such a different drop in quality that it kind of makes people see it more drastic than it really is.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you want answers. Granted, it's a genre show. You want the story to keep moving along. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it is 22 episodes, and they got time to fill. So you're going to get what you get. At the same time, if you're a fan of the show, you have to like every episode, because what you don't know is that information in this particular episode is going to come back later, a la stew maker, photograph, taken.
Yep.
Well, it's Berlin, and then they use that photograph in the start of season 2 when he basically recreates the photo with Lizzie on the mattress. So you might not like this episode, but this episode might be chock full of crap you're going to see in season 3, episode 6.
And that's why I'm adamant that don't just write a character off because they're having a couple bad episodes. Let it play out. See how you feel when the season's over. If you still feel like that, by God, write us in. We'll have a whole episode about how Lizzie's written in season 2, if that's what we have to do.
Yeah, think about it. Stewmaker was what, episode 3 or 2?
It was early on. Yeah, it was early on.
And it wasn't until season 2, episode 1, when that picture kind of comes back into play. So there you go.
Let's have some faith in Bokenkamp, and we'll see what happens. And hey, probably one of the most diverse shows on TV right now. I mean, in terms of every aspect of it, female villains definitely has people representing all aspects of the human race, and I just like it. I just like the way that they're doing it. I think that they are being very smart about what they do. Let's give them a chance to prove that. Continue to prove it, really. They've already proved it. That's going to do it for this week's case profile. Special Agent Intel is coming up in a bit. We'll be right back with Red's Rhetoric right after this.
February, the month of love, and we love all of the great people that are part of the GSM listening family. We especially love our patrons, like Jeff, who shares with us why he listens to Golden Spiral Media.
Basically, the content. I had been listening to Triplecast for a while, but once Aero Squad came over, I started looking at the podcasts that were there and seeing the shows that they were podcasting about and the people that they had hosting that I already had relationships with just drew me over, because I knew it was going to be quality content, and I knew that the people that were hosting were enthusiastic about it.
Do you love our show? Then head over to goldenspiralmedia.com/Patreon. That's Patreon, goldenspiralmedia.com/Patreon to meet Jeff, as well as our other supporters. That's goldenspiralmedia.com/Patreon. Thank you for your support. It's now time for Red's Rhetoric, that part of the show where we play 2 different parts of what we like to call Story Time with Red. You get to vote what you think is the best by posting in the Facebook group. Just search for the Blacklist Exposed right there up in the white box at the top. Or you can give us a tweet at the Blacklist GSM. Last week, it's no surprise by any means of the imagination that 100% of you definitely see the irony in Red Shrimp being the winner. I mean, it was clear that Glenn is obviously the one that steals the show. This week, our first clip is actually going to deal with Red and Lizzie, that infamous scene right at the beginning where he basically explains how you can't lie to Red.
We need to talk about the fulcrum.
I told you I don't know anything about it.
Elizabeth, one of the reasons I'm still alive is due to my love of reading. Whether it be words on a page that reveal the author's thoughts, emotions, imagination, or whether it be people in conversation to ignore what they say and instead read their expression, posture, their gesture. Lizzie, you're lying.
I'm not.
What if we made a deal? I help you find your serial killer, and you tell me about the fulcrum.
You're not even interested in serial killers.
True. I find them unimaginative and woefully predictable, but I am interested in the cases that you and the FBI have wrong.
Wrong?
The most critical assumption you're making about the deer hunter is wrong. Do we have a deal or not?
Our second clip is when Red has a heart-to-heart with Sam.
When I was young, I wanted to be able to dance, just like Gary Goddard. I still remember going to the Snowflake dance and watching him for the first time. That kid, man, he could move. Won the 8th grade talent show. He was on the Yell Squad. Gary even danced his way into Helen Hummer's pants, and let me tell you something, that was like breaking into Fort Knox.
Pops, who the hell are you?
Then in the summer of '88, I saw Gary in the diaper aisle at Safeway. He looked like hell. Gray. Out of breath, fatigued. Turns out Gary had a bicuspid valve, needed a heart transplant. He was on the wait list until the day he died. How long has Isaac been on the list now?
How do you know about my brother?
6 months? A year? 2? How long is he going to have to wait?
They won't say.
I can get your brother a heart within the week. Best surgeons. Best post-op care. And it won't cost you a dime.
Why would you do that for me?
Because you're going to do something for me.
Which was your favorite line from Red this week? Post to the group or tweet us again at the Blacklist GSM with the hashtag RedLie if you will be watching what you say and how you say it, or tweet Red Heart if you like Red helping Sam in order to help himself.
Now let's move on to Special Agent Intel. Terry had some final thoughts on the Kenyon family. What's in the suitcase? It has to be part of the fulcrum. Don't get so excited, Terry. You never know with this show. Plans are something to help further direct him to the ultimate end. He slyly got the location of the suitcase when he asked Samar to send him the weapons manifest related to weapons buried on the compound. It must be quite a weapon to have something related to it in the President of the United States car and included on the major weapons list. What I want to know is, what are those Hellfire missiles and who are all those people milling around them in the live video? Are the Hellfire missiles what the fulcrum will ultimately engage? One other thing, Tom, the new Attorney General is really smoozing up to Cooper. So I think he wants access to Red and is going to get it through him. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think Tom is going to get access to Cooper, to Red, to everything because of the fact that he got him into that trial. The Hellfire missiles specifically were only used because he operated the cameras on them and the GPS coordinates, and that's how they were able to figure out where Lizzie and Ressler were being kidnapped, held hostage by the boys, the Watchers. So the Hellfire missiles, I don't think, are going to come back into play again later on, even though Red does have the codes, because now those Hellfire missiles are in the custody of the FBI. Rory said, remember when the Blacklisters were brought to the team by Red? In this episode, the deer hunter actually had a number, but had nothing to do with Red at all. Was she added because Lizzie wanted to catch her? Or was she just forced on us to make the story relevant? Lizzie should take Ressler's advice and go on vacation so we can get a Red Central episode or two.
Ooh, I think Rory's one of the ones not happy.
No, he's not happy at all.
I don't know. Do you really want a show where Lizzie's not a big part of it? I mean, I think some people feel that way. I don't feel that way. I think she's integral to the show.
I think at this point they've earned the right that if they wanted to do it, they could get away with it. I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if, let's say, it was a Red Samar focused episode, because we know they're working together. Mm-hmm. I'd be very interested to see how that would work with Liz missing for a week. Not that I'm saying I want Megan Boone off the show by any stretch of the imagination here, but it would be interesting to see, like you said, bring some of the other characters forward because it's such a great ensemble cast as a whole, and to just see how that storyline would work. I think it'd be interesting.
On the same token, I'm going to throw it in here, and I totally believe this. I would like to see a Keen and Ressler specific episode without Red. Like, Red's off doing whatever he's doing. Maybe he gets an end teaser at the end, something like that.
And as I go Alias, so goes X-Files for Mr. Peterson.
I would just like to give it a shot. That's all I'm saying. Kim said, I really liked Red's last comment to Liz this week when he said she was afraid of losing him. I think that is what the writers are trying to get across with her behavior toward him, that she's realizing he's using her when she's believed all along that he, for some reason, cares about her. But the way she's coming across is like a high school girl instead of an FBI agent. They're trying to turn her into a seasoned agent, but then show her being incredibly immature. Drives me crazy. I hope they figure it out soon. I kind of get what she's saying as of late, the last few episodes.
I like the character, but as an FBI agent, I said this to Hank last week, she's got to be a better FBI agent. There's just got to be more protocol followed.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If you're chasing a serial killer and you see them in front of you, shoot them. Shoot in the air, do something. I mean, you got a gun, you got to deal with, you get away with murder pretty much, so just shoot in the air. Make them stop that way. Jeremy said, I think this show could be the same with just Red and the team, because the writer / Lizzie is sucking at this point. Her acting and how they are making her beyond invincible is getting ridiculous. Very unbelievable. # sad face.
Yeah.
Ouch.
These are people that are like diehard blacklisters because they're, number one, watching the show, but number two, listening to our show.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is the voice of the people. So there must be something to this if a lot of people are saying,
We even, because I do know the showrunners, they watch our live tweet. When we live tweet it, they do pay attention to that. I can't tell you if they listen to the show or not. I believe they do, just by some of the tweets they've sent to us. But I did send, after some of the feedback from you guys, I did send a tweet to John Bokenkamp just saying, hey, for us dedicated fans, people that love the show, let's take it easy on the whole kidnapping and how Lizzie's kind of being written the last couple episodes. Now, I stand by what I said earlier. You don't know what's happening until the season plays out, but I absolutely understand what is frustrating in the fans. We would be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about it. I'm sorry if that comes across negative, people. We really don't mean that to.
Just the facts, man. Just the facts.
There you go. And lastly, Kim said there sure were a lot of daddy inferences in the episode this week. Yes, there were. Lots of them.
We're just going to leave it at that because we don't subscribe to the daddy theory.
I'm not ruling it out, though.
I'm not ruling it out, but you all know my theory, and Aaron doesn't like my theory, so we'll just leave it at that.
Your theory is daddy mommy. Mine's kind of uncle daddy. So, I mean, there's some father issues no matter what.
Or stepfather.
Or stepfather. Or long-lost, really old brother. I don't know. That's going to conclude this episode. Be sure to follow us on Twitter this season at the Blacklist GSM. We live tweet during the East Coast feed, and we will use the show's hashtag, The Blacklist. We also have a Facebook group. Just search for The Blacklist Exposed on Facebook and join us for the fun. Also, the website will have all the episode intel and analysis, as well as links to subscribe to the feed in iTunes and Stitcher. That way, you don't miss an episode. Be sure to visit goldensparrowmedia.com/The Blacklist for details. And before Troy takes it over, be sure to look at our site because we will have details on how to vote for the Blacklist Exposed for the Podcast Awards.
That's right. Voting opens up on March 3rd, and it is a daily vote, we do believe. So that means every single day we want you all to be voting for the Blacklist Exposed because the award is not only for Aaron and I, but for all of you that submit feedback on a regular basis, and we greatly appreciate it. So keep that feedback coming. You can give it to us by calling us at +1 304 837 2278. Again, that's 304-837-2278. Or head on over to goldenspiralmedia.com/the blacklist, We got all the feedback options there on the left-hand column. We would greatly love to hear more of these thoughts and theories, and especially which characters you'd like to see maybe showcased a little bit more that we can send over to Booking Camp and the team.
As you leave your feedback, be sure to mention the Blacklist Exposed, and a big thank you guys for listening. And also, in relation to that podcast award, there is a little trick when you do your vote. They will actually follow up, or they did last year. I assume they're doing the same thing this year. Every time you vote, they will actually send you an email to verify that your vote isn't automated. So you'll have to basically click on the email to confirm that you voted for our show. That's not like junk mail or anything. That's totally done to keep things honest. And don't forget to answer our profiling question of the week, which is, what happened to Red's secret caller?
We will love to hear those answers as they come in. Until next time, I am Agent Troy Heinrichs. That's at Troy Heinrichs on Twitter, if you'd like to follow me there. And, of course, if you're a Resurrection fan over on ABC or even Under the Dome on CBS, which is moving to Thursday nights in the summer, you can check out my other shows over at the website noodle.mx.
I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, available at thehollywoodoutsider.com. I'm on Twitter at H_outsider, or my personal Twitter is Kaz_Peters. I like underscores. Be sure to subscribe, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production, copyright 2015. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.